What up, guys? Today we got a question from Luke, who's having a problem as a white belt that many white belts are going to have. I had this problem as a white belt, and I know many of you guys, because of the messages you send me, are having this issue. So check it out. He's been training for 8 months of Jiu-Jitsu, and he's been doing Jiu-Jitsu 4 days a week pretty consistently, and he's a young guy. And he says that when he rolls, a lot of times what will happen is the higher belts will make remarks after the roll, or kind of give him a bit of a scalding, saying something to the effect of, "Stop being such a spazzy white belt. You're rolling too hard, bro. Chill out a little bit. You're just too tense," right? They'll give him comments like this, and he says that he takes those comments to heart. He's listening to the criticism come from the people that are higher than them, and so he intentionally tries to ease up off the gas pedal, to not use as much muscle, to not use as much energy. And then what ends up happening is he still gets the comments. His message was fairly long, and he gave me a couple of examples when he was rolling with people. And then again, he describes what happened. And at the end of both of these situations, people made these same remarks that I mentioned just a moment ago. And so he sends me the message, and he's essentially looking for guidance because he says, like, look, I'm trying to slow down. I don't want to be the spazzy white belt in my class. I feel like I'm doing better. I feel like I'm not being spazzy, but I don't know what gives. They keep saying this. And so he sends me the message asking if I have any insight or any ideas on how to fix this issue. Thanks, Luke. So, brother, thank you for the question. And so check this out. This is coming from a converted white belt spaz who went through exactly what you're talking about. I guarantee you're probably going harder than what you think you are, right? You're probably spazzing out a lot more than you think. You're probably using a lot more energy than you think. So I'm going to give you a couple ideas to chew on and possibly a couple techniques that could help you fix this. But understand, this is how it starts in the beginning, right? Because you're in that initial stage of jiu-jitsu, right? You're in when you think of the 4 stages of competency, you're in the first stage. You're unconsciously incompetent. You have no idea about what you don't know, right? So you don't know that you're being spazzy. You don't understand it because you probably feel like you're being reasonable. But then what ends up happening is later on, you'll probably realize you weren't, and the people around you realize you're not. And so there's that disconnect. I know that when I first started rolling, I was the craziest, spazziest white belt, bro. I've still to this day never met a white belt as spazzy and crazy as I was. I was nuts when I look back at it. The difference is that at the time, I wasn't. I didn't feel like I was at all. I felt like I was pretty normal. Felt like I was just, competitive, but I didn't feel like I was crazy and wild. But then when I look back at it, I mean, it was like every time I rolled with someone, they caught an elbow to the mouth. That's how I got my nickname Chewy. I elbowed one of my training partners like twice in the mouth, and he was a little bit more experienced than me. And afterwards, he's like, "You big stupid Wookie." So again, went from big stupid Wookie to Chewbacca to Chewy. And again, it was because I was being a crazy, spazzy white belt, right? So I imagine that's probably what's going on for you. You are spazzy, you are crazy, you are tense. You don't feel like you are because you don't know, all right? Now, here's the thing that I kind of irritates me with this is that a lot of people in jiu-jitsu can be kind of emotionally soft about this whole subject, right? Because they sort of infer that you know what you're doing and that you're doing this on purpose, right? Like, for instance, if I had a black belt put me in doing some really crazy, dangerous stuff, I would be pretty pissed off because I'd be like, you know better. If you've been training for a decade, there's no reason why you should be doing stupid stuff that could potentially injure me for no reason, right? But when it's a white belt, I treat them like it's a baby. It's like if you have a child running around, they're just doing stupid stuff. I mean, they're putting their fingers in stuff. They're trying to put their mouth on things. They're knocking stuff off shelves. They don't know what they're doing. They're babies, right? It's kind of the same way. Again, you don't know what you're doing half the time. This is a whole new world that you're exploring, right? And so with that, again, if you're the higher belt, and I'm speaking not to Luke now, I'm speaking more to the higher belts maybe watching this. If you're a higher belt, a blue belt, purple belt, brown, whatever, and you're rolling with one of these new white belts, and they start to do some crazy stuff, it's okay to scold them because they need to have attention brought to whatever they're doing that could be unsafe or potentially dangerous. But then you need to give them something to work with, right? Don't get up and just walk off like these people are doing to Luke here listening to the video. Say, hey, man, be careful with what you're doing with that particular movement. Instead, do this. Give them something to follow, something to go off of, because I guarantee you most of the white belts that, are a little bit spazzy, a little bit wild, they don't want to be. They don't want to be the person that nobody wants to roll with. They're just dealing with their stuff, right? And that could be for a multitude of different reasons. And so, again, that's my message to the higher belts, right? Don't be emotionally soft. They don't mean anything by it. They're not doing it intentionally. They're like little children running around doing silly stuff because they don't know any better yet. And they get that guidance from the people above them who can teach them. So teach them. Now, as far as for you, Luke, a couple things. Here's what I would suggest to you. Number one, the next time someone makes one of those comments, before they walk off and leave you hanging, come up to them and say, hey, thank you for the comment. Can you tell me what I was doing wrong? I want to learn from you. I want to gain the experience. I want to gain the wisdom that you have to share. What did I do wrong? When they say, hey, you're being too wild, how do you mean? How was I being too wild? What did I do wrong so I can fix it next time? Ask them for guidance. Don't let them get off. Don't let them just walk off and say something mean. Ask them to explain. Because if there's actually something wrong there, that'll obviously they can teach you. And if they're just getting, fussy because maybe you were beating them or something like that, then they'll have to deal with it themselves. Now, the other technique that I want to share with you is to basically use your breath, and you're going to use it for two reasons. Number one, you can use it to slow yourself down. In a lot of cases, when I roll with some of my newer white belts, I'll notice that they begin to hold their breath. And if they hold their breath, it almost always follows that their body tenses up, right? They start holding their breath as their body's tensing up. And all I have to do is take a breath, bro. Breathe. And get them to breathe. And all of a sudden, it's like you feel this relaxation sort of go over their body. Not completely relaxed, obviously, but a little bit. Enough that they can function and they're not just sitting there. There was this one time I was rolling with one of my students and he literally was inside of my guard. I'm laying there looking at him, right? My legs are locked around his waist and he's grabbing my gi and he's turning purple, right? He's just holding his breath. And we talked about this later on. He had some trauma when he was younger. So again, his body's going through some crazy stuff when he's rolling. It's not just simply he has an ego or anything like that. Like his body's got some crazy learned issues that he's dealing with, and he dealt with them just fine. But anyway, he was holding the gi, holding on to me, just looking at me. And I remember he's turning purple, and I just looked at him and said, brother, breathe. And took the breath and he relaxed. And so what I would suggest to you, this is what I've done since I was a white belt or, around that time period when my coach gave it to me. It's been very useful. I still do it to this day, is when I get into a position, if I find that my body's very tense, I take a breath in through my nose, 2 into the nose, and then out through the mouth, right? I'll do that pretty much anytime I get into a position where after a scramble, when I'm trying to catch my breath, or if I notice that I'm holding my breath. Because early on, a lot of my tenseness came from the fact that I was holding my breath a lot. So that's number one. Number two is that you can use your breath to sort of modulate how hard you're actually going. So for instance, if you want to go full speed, 100%, you're not going to be able to do that with just nasal breathing. You're going to start opening your mouth and you're going to start offloading that CO2 through those breaths, right? So again, you can think of it this way. If you breathe through your nose, you can become very efficient at that and you can keep up a pretty good pace. Most of my rolling is through my nose. But then if I want to kick it up into those next gears, it'll be nose through mouth and then eventually turns into mouth breathing. And so what you can do is, again, take notice when you're rolling. Are you breathing through your mouth? Are you breathing through your nose? Unless you have some sort of obstruction, you should be able to breathe through your nose for a lot of the rolling. And if you find that you're getting a little too wild, a little too crazy, you can use your nasal breathing as a way to sort of modulate that, to basically limit yourself. Because again, if you find that you're trying to go too hard, you're going to have to start opening your mouth. So you can say, well, maybe I need to back off a little bit because in this roll, I want to roll a little slower. You get the idea. So anyway, those are some ideas to consider, some ideas to chew on, and also a message to my higher belts. When you're working with new belts, don't be soft about it. Again, help them out, but don't sort of make the idea, the conclusion that they're doing this intentionally. They're not. They just don't know what they're doing. So anyway, that's the idea. Luke, hope that helps. Talk to you guys next time.